Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Alibaba Rama.
Yes, Allie in the Zonia. Ah, that's me.
Yeah. Allison, it's great to see you. Thanks for popping on this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So great to see you. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
it's great to see you too. Great. So, how's your cool creative self?
Oh, we weave in and out of different modes on a
We
regular
do.
basis.
We do.
And we try to keep up with ourselves, and that sometimes is a positive thing and sometimes not necessarily, or not even a judgment thing. It's just it is what it is. And being able to stay with that is super important
Yeah.
because
Tell me
depending
about
on
that.
how loud your critic is in your head,
Yeah, they look like little crabs there.
they eat away.
Just being a human, like it's not even just being a musician or a creative person doing creative things, even though every human is creative. It's like there's still a critic. There's still an inner critic and a big outer critic now with all the social media, and it's a little insane.
Cricket critics
Right? Well,
or critic crickets.
have you heard that quote about if they're not in the arena, like my dad used to always say, consider the source, when someone has something to say, because very often it's not a musician throwing darts. It's certainly not somebody who also plays keyboards as well as you do throwing the darts. So it's somebody who's really giving you more of their own self-portrait in the moment.
Right,
They're
projection.
in balance,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's
their lack
I
of
remember
coffee. Mhm.
I've had, it's interesting how we have different catharses at different points in our lives, and certain things that happened in life stick and certain things don't. And one of the things that I think kind of maybe almost started me on my own individual creative journey was it was a result of turmoil that was happening in my life and my family around me, things I had absolutely no control over.
Sure.
And and
And how
and
old were you?
oh gosh, the worst time of life, starting at age 13, 13 to probably to 18, but it just if we are sensitive, and we are often sensitive because we're confronted with things that create a need to know how the outside world is doing. So, I've read a lot about empathy and how it's
Mm.
often a result of being in a position where you don't feel safe, essentially. Anyway, I digress.
That's good stuff, though.
Yeah, it keeps me it keeps me just teetering on the edge as opposed to falling off. But I came up with this idea because I used to journal a lot, and journaling was very therapeutic for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but it helped me get through a lot of stuff. And I remember thinking, why should I worry so much about what other people think if they don't?
If they don't think.
They don't worry about what other people think. What's the
Oh.
funny? Why should I worry so much about what other people think if they don't think? That's funny.
That was like a sign I saw in the supermarket once that said, "If you don't see it, ask." And the friend I was with said, "Can I see it?" It's pretty great.
That's good too. You don't see that.
So, okay, so if they're not worrying about what you think, you mean,
Yeah,
why should you worry about what they think?
right.
Yeah.
And it took me, I'm still working on that, but I kind of even remember where I was walking in Brooklyn. It's
Mm,
I have this snapshot, we have snapshots of different
yeah.
moments, and music is very powerful for bringing those to the surface, as well as other triggers. Like I remember reading a list of different memory triggers,
Yeah.
what brings, and what were at the top, music and smells were like two of the biggest ones.
Sure.
that just fill you with something, whatever it is.
An imprint,
Yeah.
a capture, a moment, like a photograph that just
Right.
stay with you. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And physical things like that it stays in your body,
Oh, yes.
like I remember being in the supermarket checkout line and I happened to tie the wrist ties around my winter jacket too tight as I was getting ready to go outside. And all of a sudden I was back as a toddler being jerked around and held too tight and squishing of my wrists and hurting me. And I went, oh my God, like it was just a flash of a memory and a flashback of this sucks.
Right.
I
And
need my
well,
own place.
right. And that's what trauma is all about.
Yeah.
And
We
there's
all
so
have
many levels of trauma. I mean, the level of trauma of like you bite your fingernail too deep and it bleeds, that's trauma. To something really horrific happening to you and how you deal with that. But
yeah,
but being I think it's really for me, I don't know, creativity is something that sort of abounds all aspects of life. I worked with an improvisational actress for a number of years and being her sort of her muse in a sense, but not yes, but not. I would accompany her during one person performances.
oh
And
cool.
that was very pivotal for me in terms of finding the well to draw from my own music because there was no script and there was no score.
Sure.
We had a few points where I would do a song, that we had planned. We had a couple of things, but I'd say 95% of it was okay. I have no idea what's happening. And so I had to focus, logically on what was happening, but at the same time draw from my creative reserves. And sometimes
Yeah.
there was nothing there. Sometimes the well was dry. And I was like, okay, well, how can I be okay with that? But still
Sure.
bring something to the table.
Well, how old were you and how did you get this gig? How did this come about?
Oh, when did I do this? I'm bad with dates. It was in the 90s. It's in the 90s.
Did
How old
this
was
person
I? I don't
approach
know. I
you?
was two.
This artist approach you or did you approach her?
I don't remember how we met.
And what was her thing? How'd she even invite you to do it that you said yes? What was the
She
intrigue for
said
you?
she was looking for someone to. Oh my God, wow. I think one of our first performances was out at Kripalu in
Oh, cool.
Western Mass at it's a center for yoga and health.
Yeah.
And I'd never been there before, and that was in early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
We met and we were very connected. I guess she was auditioning different people, and so we have the same birthday, different year, but same birthday. And
Cool.
she's an amazing artist, like theatrical,
Right.
most. And she would have all these different outfits that she would wear. Wait, someone's coming to visit here.
And I have two upstairs. You have a kitty.
I have two kitties.
Nice. I used to have two cats. Now I have two dachshunds.
I know you do. They're fabulous.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were going to come down and be with us or not, but it's pouring, so they're on the couch.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, first few hours in the morning are nice because I can get a lot done.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
anyway,
So she was
so
like a creative performing artist in like uh modern dance,
well,
theatrical.
she did movement and she did some dancing, but she's more just a lot of verbiage and just
Okay, so
amazing. Her name's Diana Giardella. She's just an incredible image visionary. I don't know how else to say it. And we
yeah,
did a number of different shows.
cool.
We did this one show at Kripalu, which was really powerful. And that was
You were
my
on
first
electric piano.
experience. Hmm?
You were on electric piano.
And synthesizer.
Sweet.
So I would use a lot of different things. At one point, I had a Kurzweil K2000, was a sampler,
Yeah.
and I had like motorcycle sounds and telephones ringing, and like I would call. That was one of the fun things that we did. Like I would have to decide a good time for, and it would be like one of the shows was called Yes to Everything.
Oh, wow.
And we did a run of that in Central Square at the dance complex. They had a really nice performance space there. And so we did that there. And
Nice.
it was the set was she was a single woman living in an apartment, and the set was her apartment. So having the phone ring was, and sometimes she would ignore it, and sometimes it depends. Like I didn't know what was going to happen, and she didn't know when I was going to call. So
Yeah, yeah.
it was essentially 2.5 hours of full focus. Not like when you're playing music where there's parts of tunes where you just kind of you're floating along with it, and you're
Mhm.
playing, and yeah, it's not like that at all.
So it was a visual audio dual improvisational, let's just see what happens kind of approach.
Collaboration,
Yeah.
essentially. I mean, she kind of drove the bus,
Conversations. Yeah.
but there were times when I would take the reins. It was
So that
really.
was a very different kind of thing, but you started off with organ lessons, piano lessons. What age were you for all that?
I was 3 when I had a dream of playing the harp, because I must have seen somebody, a woman, I think I have a very deep image. I don't know what my memory has done to alter this, or whether this was real or in my imagination, but it doesn't really matter. Um, a woman wearing a long satin gown, like someone from the Marx Brothers or something, like old, very old, long flowing hair, sitting at the harp. And
Sweet.
it was an image. And I don't know, I must have said I don't know how it happened, but when I was 5 years old, I came home and there was an old upright Armstrong piano, and we had like it sounds fancy, but it was kind of a modest duplex penthouse. But it was an apartment at the top of the building, and had a room on an upper floor that had one room and a bathroom, and the piano was there. And and
So the piano wasn't there before. You just came home, you're 5 years old, and the piano's there.
I think so. I mean, I don't really recall, but
Sure, yeah.
I
Because
remember thinking it
you had
was
to
very
get it at some
strange.
point.
I was remembering it was saying it was very strange that the piano cost $25, but it cost $75 to move it in.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That didn't make any sense to me at the time.
Well, that's the typical thing they say about musicians, right? You've got a $500 car filled with $4,000 worth of equipment to go make $50 at a gig.
And what's the difference between a pepperoni pizza and a musician?
I don't know.
Pepperoni pizza can actually feed a family of 4.
Oh. Oh god. That's great.
You don't wanna go down that rabbit hole at the
No,
moment.
you don't, because I can remember saying to you, "Oh, I'm just loving doing what I'm doing, and I can't wait. I think I even wanna be a musician in my next life," and you said, "Oh, no, no," and I wanted to ask you, "Why did you say no? Was it because of the money?"
I don't know what mode I was in, I don't recall.
Could have
Oh,
been anything.
geez. Mhm.
So there's an Armstrong piano, and then
Right.
you started taking lessons.
I started taking lessons. I think my first teacher's name was Miss Peacock.
Oh,
That
that's
didn't
good.
last very long. My biggest memory about that experience was having my music book in the car, and I was eating a Swiss cheese sandwich, and I got some grease from the Swiss cheese on the book, and I was all upset.
Yeah.
That's And then my parents found this other teacher named Mr. Davis. We lived in New York City. And my mother, we lived in Inwood, which is way uptown Manhattan. And my mother would drive me down to my lessons. I don't remember where Miss Peacock was, but I do remember Mr. Davis lived on the Upper West Side, and with his family, and his wife was a violin teacher, and she was always in the other room. I could kind of hear her playing, and he had little kids running around.
Hmm.
He was kind of this eccentric, guy who, for some reason, didn't want to teach me about rhythmic stresses. So he thought I was extremely talented and had me featured in a recital that he did at a place called Judson Hall in New York City, and where I
Wow.
played the first, I think it was like the first movement of Mozart's Third Sonata when I was 7, but I didn't play it correctly. Didn't know what a time signature was.
Yeah, yeah.
So all the it I don't know. I don't know what his deal was. His deal was to, you know, get him out there and
Not interrupt your pleasure too soon.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was a little kid and I think I really enjoyed playing, but there was a point where Allison, you have to practice, and I had resistance to that.
Yeah, maybe you
That
didn't want.
might I don't really remember the early times.
Yeah, but it was classical.
Oh
It
yes.
the
Oh yeah.
classical beginning, and I thought that was pretty standard for most piano players, but it wasn't for Susanna Sifter. I was just talking to her the other day,
Oh,
and
interesting.
I thought, if it isn't, what are they teaching you? They're certainly not teaching you jazz, probably. So it was just like, here's music. This is the piano. This is how the notes work. This is rhythm. This is harmony. Here's some
Oh
basic
wow.
chords. Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought it was pretty standard with classical. And, with guitar, it was all classical for the longest time. And Berkeley was the only college I knew of that I could attend that was contemporary, a whole different bag. But so you were starting pretty early on with, I want to do my own thing.
I guess. I mean,
Yep.
nobody in my family played music.
Did you make up any stuff? Like, you were making up your own melodies and things, and so you didn't want to practice the book stuff. You wanted to keep making things up.
No, I was a good girl. I practiced. I wrote one song. It's called "Tell Me What I Said."
Good.
That's the only one I remember. My people told me that I used to sit down and play stuff, but I don't recall.
Nice.
I
They
don't
should.
recall.
Well, even if they had films of us when we were that age, they wouldn't have had sound.
Right. I have films, but no sound. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know if there's anything of me playing piano. And I picked up the guitar when I was about 8. Um, I
Oh, that's great. Are you still playing guitar? I didn't realize you
I
had.
have been. I've had a little resurgence. I sold my Ovation and my
That's
um,
great.
a boutique guitar I had because I didn't like either. And then I picked up recently. I bought a kind of parlor size guitar because
Acoustic.
I had a dreadnought. Yeah, acoustic.
Yeah, I like parlor size.
It's a Breed Love, and it's a beautiful little thing. Here, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, show us.
Love it. It's really pretty.
Oh, nice. It's got a cutaway and everything.
Yeah, it's got a short scale neck.
Beautiful.
Which yeah, I liked it. Guitars, anything made of wood has the soul as far as I'm concerned. So
Yeah.
anything made of natural product as opposed to like modern keyboards, which this is my 1933 Steinway,
Wow. You
which
know any of its history?
um not really. Some
How long
people
have you had it?
hmm?
How long have you had it?
About 15 years, maybe
Yeah.
10 to 15 years. Um, it's an M, so it's a 5/8, and I got it from my piano tuner at the time, my technician. He had a workshop, and I went in there with a blindfold and went around to different pianos because I didn't want to be lured by a pretty face.
Good for you.
Yeah, and just went over and just played, and this instrument just kept coming back to me, and between 10 and 15 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, more than that. More than when my great aunt died. It's about 15 years ago. Yeah, she left me some money and it paid for the piano. So she bought it for me,
Oh, that's awesome.
which was great. Yeah,
Super cool.
we need to get some plastic surgery done. It needs some rebuilding.
Hmm.
It's still quite beautiful. It's got original ivory keys that are in very good shape.
Awesome.
It had been restrung. I think a family had it for years. That's what
Oh,
Chris
sure.
told me.
Many
And
families probably.
Hmm,
Many
what?
families.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it lived in one place for a while, but it has a little bit of got a few battle scars here and
Mm.
there. I don't care about that, you
So
know.
you've probably felt very inspired by this instrument and written many songs on here.
Yeah, I've done especially during COVID,
Yeah.
we got a little more connected.
So when you get into writing, what happens? I mean, do you have to have your favorite pencil and favorite music or cup of something to drink, or do you have to turn it on in any way, or is it always there? You can just compose at any time.
Well, I can sit down and play anything. I mean, eh,
But when you really feel
sit
inspired,
down
do you
and
remember how you feel? Is there a different feeling when you feel inspired? Or
well, there's 2 I feel like I've got several different modes.
yeah, tell us
I've
about that.
got my singer-songwriter mode,
Yeah.
and because I came to singing later than most, like in my 20s.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was at Berkeley, I remember
As a
feeling,
student.
yes, as a student. I went there from 1975 to 1979. Those
Nice.
dates I remember.
Oh, well, we overlapped 1 year.
Oh, wow.
I was a student from 78 to 82. I
Yeah.
didn't know you then, but I knew you in Girls' Night Out, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a whole other thing. Um, I used to write a lot of prose, and I have journals that I used to write, and I wrote some poetry. And I remember feeling, when I was a student at Berkeley, it was a little odd. I had my writing thing, and then I had my music thing.
Mm.
And music, I mean, the first song I ever wrote, like a real song, I think I had just either, I was still at Berkeley or I'd just gotten out. I wrote pieces. I wrote instrumental pieces while I was a student. And I still do write instrumentals. I'm not very prolific though. I don't write all the time. I kind of, I sort of see it as my hobby.
Nice.
It's something I do when it strikes me, when the muse hits.
Yeah,
And I
that's
can
what I'm
get
talking about.
inspired by there's different things that inspire me.
Oh, yeah, and I think humans use creativity for everything, so
I went to, in terms of instrumental music, in 2014, I went back to Kripalu, where I've been many times because I went and got certified to teach yoga at,
Oh, wow,
at Kripalu. I went and lived there for 4 weeks.
cool.
Did a full immersion 6 days a week. It was
Wow.
very powerful. And I brought my keyboard and I got my own room. And the first piece that I wrote the first day I was there is I I actually I want to produce it. I think
Yeah,
it it really the energy of where I was and where my mind was at. It took me so long to prepare myself to free my schedule for a month so I could just do that. And there I was, and it was the first night, and I just sat down at the keyboard and closed my eyes, and there's such a meditative vibe out there that I just went inside, and this piece came out, and I crafted it for a while. Sometimes I look at pieces of music kind of like, giving birth. Sometimes there's no labor, and sometimes it goes on for a long time.
true.
So how long it takes to create something is it's not indicative of anything about the piece necessarily. It's not,
No,
it has to be a complex thing that takes a longer period of time or whatever.
it's also not a judgment on your receptivity to the muse either, because sometimes we haven't even experienced enough to write the bridge, and then all of a sudden something else happens a few years later and you go, "Now I know what I should write in that bridge."
Yeah, that's one way, right?
Yeah.
But with instrumental music, it's especially something that's somewhat repetitive, and this is a fairly accessible consonant piece. It's just a matter of how to orchestrate it. And I've been sort of crafting that now for 11 years, no, 9 years. It's in my head. I can play it on the piano and
Yeah.
it's got several sections. But yeah, I mean, different things. I wrote the first song I wrote with lyrics was when I was still at Berkeley. was called "You See, I Live Alone," and I wasn't living alone. And so sometimes, things are autobiographical and sometimes they're not.
No, right.
I've written songs inspired by newspaper articles.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's cool.
I've written songs, and then there's the prophecy songs where usually like love related, where you write something like, "Why am I writing this?" And 2 years later, aha, that's why I wrote this.
Definitely, definitely.
Like different things. It's just, and I think there's definitely a process where I think you can kind of free your mind and just do sort of like what Paul McCartney did, what the Beatles did, and you could really see it in that series Get Back. I'm sure you've
Yes.
seen that. Where I mean, in that at that phase of the Beatles, Paul's kind of the engine of a lot, and he's sitting at the piano and he's not caring whether he's sounding silly or not. And so I've really, I
All
think
play.
taken that to heart and just
Yeah.
whatever, as getting back to the beginning of our conversation, like putting the critic aside.
Yeah, and mucking about, giving yourself permission to just explore.
Right, and basically be a kid because until
Yeah.
you develop enough of a superego.
Well, yeah, it's like I'm always telling my students, can you remember when you were 3 or 4 years old? If somebody took you to, that giant toy store, something Schwartz, HRO
Oh,
Schwartz,
FAO Schwartz.
there it is, FAO. If somebody took you to that store or filled a room full of toys, top to bottom, and just let you in there at 3 or 4 years old, did you think you'd turn around and say, "So how do I go about playing with any of these? Do you have a manual? I would like to read the directions on how to put these blocks together, and I really need to take some lessons about how to play with that train, and, who should I study with if I wanna go play with that swing set?" It'd be like, "Are you out of your mind? You would have ran in there, touched everything, played with everything, broke something, jumped on something. You would have just eaten it up and they wouldn't have been able to drag you out of there. So why do we put this thing in there? Like, why are we told so much to halt everything and not go after things in a very, a natural way? Fear, yeah, but
Yeah.
and where does the fear come from?
Right.
All
Well,
those
that's
stupid grades and all those teachers and all these people telling us how to live, and there's this right and wrong, and really there isn't. There's just you're regulated or you're not regulated, and you can't be an indecent human being. We're trying to teach you how to be a decent human being and function as a whole, like be part of the traffic, don't be a problem in the traffic. Everybody moves together, but we take it to the extremes. So then we think there's this almighty something right or wrong in the sky somewhere that knows that we're not doing anything correctly. Uh, we must have written it wrong. It's a wrong way to write a song or whatever, and there is no right or wrong. It's all taste, and that whole experimentation and ease goes out the window. And I've had so many people say to me about that Paul scene where he just goes in, he goes, "We need one more song." And he goes in and they sort of brush through probably how long it actually took, but he starts writing Get Back right on camera. And it's brilliant. And most people say, "How in the world is he doing that?" I thought, "Are you nuts? That's how all of us musicians do it." You know, they don't realize we're all the same. Any human being would do it that way if they had an inclination to go write a song.
if they felt that they had permission.
Exactly. And I'm always coming back on all of these episodes talking about artistic self permission because that's what Paul has in droves,
Right.
absolute droves. And
What's the matter? You don't have the credentials? Well, then you have no right to tread there.
right,
Give me a break.
right. I
Right.
remember being a young teacher at Berkeley and one of the admin people introducing me to a group of people we were standing with. And they said, not only is Lauren a guitar teacher, but she's a songwriter and a producer. And I wanted to say to them, "Oh, no, I'm not a producer yet. I'm trying to be a producer. I would like to learn to be a producer." But I was, like maybe 24 years old. And I felt this weird feeling about it that they were saying I was something that I felt like I still was trying to be. And I realized you have to put that label on yourself. You have to tell people I'm a producer. You have to fall in love with the stuff and spend the time doing it and become that. You take yourself there, you know?
It's so interesting, and I do that with, like, I teach harmony at Berkeley. It's one of the things I teach,
Yes, I love
and
classes. There used to be 5 levels of it too.
Yes, they did.
I loved that. I loved
Well,
Harmony.
now there's Fundamentals, MAT, Harmony 2. So you could think of Harmony 2 as the new Harmony 3.
But what happened to 4 and 5? They don't go there anymore?
No, they do. We have 2, 3, and 4.
You scrunch it all together.
It's kind of scrunched together. It's well, most hit songs are 4 chords, but I don't even want to get into that right
No, I
now.
don't
We
want
go
to
back
because
to
that's like saying I'm gonna only use 3 crayons. It's like, come on, when you were 4, you wanted the biggest box of crayons. You didn't want just 3.
64, man, 64
Yeah, or even
with
bigger.
the sharpener.
128.
Oh, when I was a kid, it was 64.
Yeah, I think it was 64. But, there are
Right.
that
So
makes
speaking
sense.
of crayons, the palette, what I tell my students is
Yes.
all I'm doing is helping you increase your palette.
Thank
And they're
you.
like, well, I don't know how to use these because it comes. Well, first of all, you have to figure out a way
Mm.
to hear them. So there's a couple of choices. If you play keyboards, you're all set.
Mhm.
Play guitar, you're all set too, but you're gonna have to know the names of the notes you're playing because that you don't know. A lot of guitar players don't always know the names of what the notes are.
I
So you
know,
have
and some of them are 6th and 7th semesters, and that makes my mind explode.
oh, oh. Well, I
But
tell
no
I
time
tell
for that.
tell everybody that you really should not that you have to play piano. Oh, here's my other one. They want to eat. Look at
You get to
this
meet
is my
both of them
baby
today.
girl.
Oh, hello. Look at the
Oh,
cutie with the feet.
she's the sweetest thing on the planet.
Uh,
She'll she'll never be mean.
I
The other
love
one, yeah, they're the best. Oh, anyway, so you have to find a way, or you can use some kind of app.
Mhm.
You can use Logic if
Yep,
and plug it in that way with notation. You can use Finale.
right.
Don't use the enable chord playback though when you're putting chord symbols in because it's awful.
Yeah, yeah.
So you write the notes in, and then you listen and you say, well, I don't like that. Gee, no, maybe I do need a modal interchange chord here.
Mhm.
You have to play.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
have to
love
play.
modal
You have to experiment. You can't worry about making mistakes, not sounding good. I mean, Kenny Werner's whole thing,
Yeah,
the effortless mastery,
absolutely.
is all about not sounding good. So, translation, the ego getting there, well, we don't really like this one. Let's put that one aside. Oh, sure. No, 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 no. You don't know how to do this. And I
Yeah,
think all of that
yeah.
is the result of the human experience of being small people who are uncoordinated and can't do things, and parents
Mhm.
maybe not letting their kids be kids as much as they could.
Maybe.
Think there's sometimes that's it.
Sure.
Children have no filter, so they internalize everything. And I have a very strong memory. I was at Berkeley and I went home to visit my family and my father everything it was usually pretty good but one time my father was helping him move a box of tea. I think it was in a television was in a box from the trunk of the car into the apartment building, and he was getting really pissed at me and I'm like, what is your problem? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm helping you. And he started yelling at me and I said, you know what, Daddy,
Mhm.
F you. And I
How old
grabbed
were
my
you?
stuff and I left and I went home to Boston. I'd
How
never
old?
done that.
Oh, okay, you
I
were
was
driving.
no, I took the train. I
Oh,
went to the subway and I got to Penn Station. I was so angry at him.
wow.
You know, now I would have been like, okay, well, he's having a tough time with something.
Mm.
But that experience was really powerful. The next morning he called me and profusely apologized.
But it took him till the next morning. He didn't well, it took you a while to get home too, so he figured.
But the fact that he did that affirmed for me that, wait a minute, it was worse than I thought. It had nothing to do with me.
Of
I
course, yeah.
got blown up, but it was him. So
Yeah.
that was another pivotal moment. I had that one when I was like 14 or 15, and then this was a pivotal thing, because you don't know what
Mm.
battle someone else is fighting, which is a whole thing. But
No.
if it comes out sideways at you, I don't know how I got there, but I think I do. It's like we end up internalizing this behavior.
Mhm.
We don't give ourselves permission to bumble around like little kids.
Yeah, because we're afraid we're gonna get attacked again by one of those explosive adults that are, unregulated and not getting their needs met and blaming it on us.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, I
Well,
mean, I went to college for I wanted to study psychology
oh, sweet.
for
I
two
took a lot
years.
of psychology too in high school. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a funny thing I wanted to share with you about that.
Okay.
I went to Hunter College in New York for 2 years before I got seriously bitten by the music bug. And I was very interested. I was taking a lot of liberal arts classes and anthropology, sociology, communications at the time, mass communication. We
Wow.
read, Marshall McLuhan and all Alvin Toffler, all this stuff. And it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, then if I wanted to be a psychology major, I found out that I had to take statistics.
Oh.
And I said, I don't want to take statistics. When you're 19, you're like, you make these big decisions,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
nothing.
Right. Not going that way.
No.
Well, sometimes it's a natural call, sometimes
Yeah,
it's an
well,
instinct that helps you.
right. Well, I mean, my life would have been very different if I'd gone in that direction. Probably. I mean, who's
No,
to
you'd
say?
probably be still doing the same job you're doing because we do a lot of psychology in 8th
Oh, I should have precipitated and
grade.
known that
See
was
that coming,
coming.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and at that point, I had started getting really interested in sort of in jazz, a lot more fusion.
Mm.
It's interesting how I came from classical music
Yes, tell
to
me.
rock. Like that's an easier shift than going to jazz. Well, also my parents were born in Europe, and my father was an opera buff, and
Whoa.
I listened. Without trying to. The only music that was playing in the house was either opera or folk music or some musicals.
Mm,
Not yeah, like a little bit of that. It
cool.
it was really I went from playing classical music, and of course the Beatles. Meet the Beatles was the first album I was actually allowed to get, so I still have my copy.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And it's funny that so many of those titles didn't exist in England because it was called With the Beatles in England.
I didn't even know they were English at
Oh,
first because I couldn't read
oh, sure.
very well, and I remember when I figured out what standing in the queue in Liverpool meant. Because
I know.
they didn't sing with English accents, and I
Mm,
didn't know. I was an only child. I didn't know
yeah,
that "Roll
you
Over
didn't hear them talking.
Beethoven" "Roll Over Beethoven" wasn't a Beatles song, that the
Chuck
Beatles
Berry,
didn't
right?
write
Yeah,
that. I didn't know who Chuck Berry was at the time.
sure.
I
Yeah.
did learn who Chubby Checker was. I had, the twist of the album,
Oh, that's cool.
Chubby Checker.
But yeah, I remember thinking, wow, the Beatles are so clever to say, when I call you up, your line's engaged. I thought, what a nice way to say that instead of saying your line is busy. Because, we used to have a thing called call waiting on a landline phone that the phone company rented you the equipment for, and you'd get a busy signal, which was probably a B flat note. And
Is
if you
it?
called somebody and their line was busy, you couldn't get through, sometimes for hours. So here's Paul singing, "When I call you up, your line's engaged." And I'm thinking, wow, that's such a clever way of saying it. But that's how they say it. When I was calling England and talking to different publishers and record companies and stuff, I'd be like, "Oh, the line's engaged. Would you please hold?" It was like,
Well,
that's just how they say your phone is busy over there. It was not
well,
any, earth-shattering lyric. It was just that's how they talk over there. I was like, "Oh."
they speak a different English than we do. My
Yeah,
favorite thing is I've been to England a number of times. My
me
favorite
too.
one
I
is,
love it.
in Union Square, New York City, the 14th Street. There's a subway stop, and the track is curved, so there are these grates that come out when the
Mm,
train arrives in the
Mind the gap,
station
mind the
to
gap.
keep you from falling between the train and the tracks,
Yeah.
and they say, "Watch your step getting off the train. Watch your step getting off the train," as opposed to, "Mind the gap."
Yes, mind the gap.
It's the same
That's a
thing.
great film too. Did you ever see that?
No, it's a
You watch
movie?
a very underground, cool, f artsy film called Mind the Gap.
Oh, no, really? I have to make a note of
Yeah.
that.
I think
Yeah.
I have a copy of it.
Yeah, that's the first time I went to England, I realized, wow, they speak English, but it's a different language.
And they really are polite about it. Like, I was walking down the streets in London, and instead of saying, like, "No parking," or "Curb your dog," or "Don't let your dog soil you know, the ground," or whatever they say here, it's, like, pretty crude and to the point, usually spelled wrong, trying to get your attention, and it's weird, but in London, it was, like, a couple of paragraphs. If a person should be walking their dog and let their dog soil the footpath, then that person should then gather the pickup bag for it was like on and on and on to just say, pick up after your dog. Like, it was just amazing. I just loved how polite they were.
And when you're walking down the street and someone accidentally bangs into you, instead of saying, "Excuse me," they say, "Pardon, pardon,
Pardon.
pardon."
Pardon. I
Yes, I
was
love
at the
it. Yeah.
the 1991 Grammy Awards, and one of the after parties, hoping to see somebody cool. Walking through a doorway to another room, I literally bumped into Graham Nash, and neither of us said anything because we both didn't give. We both decided to go through that doorway at the same time, and he didn't move out of the way, and neither did I, and neither of us said anything. It's pretty funny.
Wow.
Uh, but getting back to harmony, I think it's very interesting that painters don't study the chemistry to make their own colors, right? They don't say, this particular red is 55% magenta with 32% blah, 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 and, whatever. They don't go on into a chemistry kind of dialogue to understand how that color works. They just see colors. They learned how things blend. Maybe they work with a color wheel. They see color relationships. But the Beatles had like a natural understanding of how those chords worked because they played all the standards. They played songs from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, their parents' era, and all those songwriters of those times, the Rodgers and Hammersteins, and all those folks, all the show tunes, they were beautifully constructed melodies. They sometimes had introductions that didn't ever repeat themselves in the body of the song, and they also had chords of every color. It wasn't just the 4 chords or the 3 chords in rock and roll. And so they weren't adverse to chords. Like, if you even Google all the chords the Beatles used, you see all the colors. You see all the chords that we teach at Berkeley. It's fantastic. And so were all the people that I grew up with in the '70s. James Taylor, Carly Simon, the Yes, the Guess Who, um, Doobie Brothers, Allman Brothers, Stevie Wonder. They all used all the cool chords. Billy Joel, Elton John. It was like I was not I loved harmony. I was so amazed to play a chordal instrument, and
Oh,
there's
it's
so
nice.
few chordal instruments. That's why
Well,
it gets me so mad when guitar players only want to play lead. It's like you're one of like so few chordal instruments on the planet that can play more than one note at the same time, and you never play more than one note. You either play all 6 or 1, and it's like there's so many beautiful things with guitar in between, you know? We're a polyphonic instrument. That's
mhm,
really cool.
mhm, hmm.
So you can learn harmony in a natural way. Like, I don't know how to use these chords. If you just hear how songs are working, but a lot of folks are listening to people who'd never used those chords before. And
Well,
so
what's happening, yeah.
it's not natural to them to hear
Well, what's
those
happening
sounds.
now is I went to see Ed Sheeran,
Oh yeah.
went to Gillette Stadium along with 72,000 other people.
How was it?
Um, it was interesting.
Were
He
you
has,
aware of any of his music prior?
yes, he has one incredibly beautiful song, and I can't recall it off the top of my head right
But that
now.
one song drew you to the show.
No, no, actually, a friend invited me to go with them.
Oh, nice.
I said, okay, yeah, I'll drop some coin and because you definitely drop coin. um, it's an experience. I mean, you're also paying for all the pyrotechnics, you're paying for all the visuals. And because music has become so merged with visuals,
Oh yeah.
I remember getting really excited when MTV, developed the whole concept of writing, of creating a visual image for the sound as opposed to the sound just supporting the visuals.
Hmm.
I was like, wow, that's so great. But I digress. But
It
it's
was fun.
evolved into the situation where a concert is a visual experience.
Yeah.
And there were things I didn't like about it, like it was a round stage, and
Hmm.
and the band wasn't on the stage with him. They were off
What?
in separate little stages. Well, I didn't like that. And he
Yeah.
didn't even use a band like because he's a looper.
Oh,
He uses this looping machine. The bass was covered everything. It was like this giant audio fog that
that's
covered.
awful.
It was awful. I had my earplugs in, and
It's
I
still
could
not
barely.
enough.
It was too much. But actually, I mean, there were some great things. He did a lot of different stuff through the show, and he was very connected to the audience, and he
Yeah,
was
he's a
quite
lovely guy.
lovely.
Yeah.
He talked a lot. He had a lot of interesting things to say, stories about his roots. But I'd say 60 to 70% of the music was four chords, if that.
Hmm.
It was more about a story he was telling, which
Oh,
is kind of what rap and hip hop are. But that's what that is. I'm not expecting that
right.
music to have the
Harmony.
harmonic structure that I
Right.
sort of want to hear from rock and pop. It's a different
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And one of the great things was John Mayer did an opening solo acoustic set.
Really nice.
He came and did. He's really talented. He's
Yeah.
a great acoustic guitar soloist.
Yeah. I was
Can,
so happy when he made it because he's a real musician.
oh God, yeah, yeah. And he played a song with Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran is very good. I mean, he's got a good voice. And he's one of the top selling artists in the world now. But it just the whole thing that harmony has taken a back seat.
Hmm. Well, so
I
has
think.
melody, and so has real instrument playing by real people. But
Well, I refuse to buy into that in terms of my own self. I don't
well,
care.
yeah, I play all the instruments and enjoy doing it that way. I don't even care if that becomes very old fashioned or fossil. It's fun.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
It's fun to keep learning instruments and to learn more about recording and to just do what we do. But I should have realized you being in the harmony department, especially, and knowing your, I was going to say so many words at the same time, your brilliance, your experience, your harmonic sense in so many different settings that I've seen and heard you play in online and live. I should have given you a song with more chords in it than just a city.
Well, it's
When
always
you
a
played on that tune, that was so funny. A friend of mine had written a bluesy kind of tune, so at that time I wanted to write one back. But
uh-huh.
yeah, that was fun. I loved what you came over and played this
Oh,
very note. You were playing
oh
this.
yes.
Yes.
I'm actually thinking of getting. I have a Nord Electro 3,
Yeah,
which is
that's what this is.
wonderful, but I'm thinking of getting a stage because I'm a little disenchanted with another company. Say, I don't want to lose any potential endorsements.
Right, 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 right. I think experiencing the sounds in songs that they actually like is a way in for folks to play because they think all these chords are jazz chords and that they're uncool. And it's like all the people I just mentioned a few subjects back, or paragraphs back, we should say, use those chords. They're not, the chords themselves are not a particular style. They're just
Right.
chords.
Of course, right. Yeah, of course. I talk a lot. I have four words that I like to use: content,
Mm,
context, location, duration.
mm,
Those four words will give any musical event, will give you a way to sort of frame any musical event or identify.
cool.
And so we get in there and it's like, okay, C major 7, in chord in space. has its properties as we get into the makeup of the color, right?
But where it's coming from and where it's going.
Right? Where it came from. So the way we perceive a sound or any event is in relation to what we've seen or heard before,
Yeah.
and then where it's going.
Yeah.
And our ear has always there's always a balance between what we expect to hear and a
Yes.
surprise.
I love the surprise.
Right. Well, that's what fusion was. It was kind of
Okay.
like, I mean, I think that was, for me, that was an interest. That was what drew me to it, was that it was very exciting because it changed a lot.
Yeah. Well, even when I'm writing, I always want to love every word and every chord and every melody note, and I want to take my ear by surprise. My first ideas that might come to me are typical, but I want to do something I haven't done before, and I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. I'm trying to do something that moves me and still interests my ear.
Right, but there's, what's the word for it? There's a word. It's kind of about, it's a philosophical term, and I can't think of it right now.
It'll
But
come to you. Tell me those 4
it's sort of
criteria again.
content.
Yeah, it'll
Right.
come
Can
back
I
to you.
use my piano? We do
Yeah,
something sonically?
sure. That'd be great.
Okay, so I have a C major 7 chord.
Right?
Okay, so there's a lot, that is what it is, that's a series of frequencies that are mixing with one another. You've got a major 7, you've got a perfect fifth, a major third, a minor third, another major third, another perfect fifth, and together they create that sonority, with different overtones on different instruments. Sorry, my piano's really out of tune. Gotta get tuned really soon. I let my ears melt into the dystopia that creates. I kind of like it, because I can do it. All right. Anyway, so that's the content. I have musical Tourette's, by the way. And then there's the context. So if I'm like, oh, all of a sudden that C major 7 sounds like 1, then I'm going to 4, right?
Mhm.
Or where am I coming from if I'm going from D major 7 to C major 7? If I establish D in a strong location, that will make it sound like a 1 chord. And then we've got flat 7 major 7. Oh, yes. We have a different, we have a Dorian or a Mixolydian source then, or
Right.
whatever. And so that's content, context, location. Where is it located in the phrase? Is it establishing tonality? Is it, passing location? Is it cadential?
Mm.
Lots of, the location will give us a clue, and also how long it lasts. So dominant seventh chords are really, those are, I think of them as kind of the most mutable, because they can very comfortably, depending on the idiom, cover any of the functions, tonic, subdominant, dominant, subdominant minor, or whatever. The dominant chords are just, you can put any tension on top. If you're in blues, or if you're in a jazz scenario, let's make this the 5. So. There are no wrong notes.
Right. You can play any note on any chord as long as you know how to resolve it. And do
Right.
Joe Pass.
So those are the words: location, content, content, and context, and location, duration.
So great.
So
And the philosophical word you were trying to find is how they make you feel.
no, it's like not ethics. It's not ethics. It's like about taste.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's always a combination, Lauren, I think, of predictability and unpredictability. Like if it's too unpredictable, like, if you take 12-tone rows, a lot of that music, if you're
Yeah.
not grounded, I mean, some people are very comfortable not being grounded in a tonality.
Yeah.
Other people aren't.
Yeah. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm generally not either. I
I
like
love
being home.
harmony.
Well, there's harmony in atonalism in
A
its
lot
own.
of it.
I mean, I don't consider myself particularly a dissonant player.
No, I wouldn't say you're dissonant either. You were
Um,
about to say something about 5 week before.
yes, at 5 week, what I did, I do a presentation for the kids my first Monday morning at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning. So I was doing a thing with guide tone lines, so representing the harmony and theory. And I did a thing with guide tone lines for a long time, and I had them sing guide tone lines, and we built them and all this. And then I decided to change it this year, so I took Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and I created a myriad of treatments. So I mean, I
Cool.
could show it to you if you want to see.
Yes,
You want to
sure.
see? Let me see if this is
Oh, it's
doing.
going to share the screen kind of show me.
I
Good.
can do that too. Yes.
Right. That would be
Some of
good for
them.
the viewers who'll be able to see it
Yeah,
later.
right
Okay,
on.
everybody listening, go to the YouTube at about an hour, 6 minutes in and look for this
Is that
chart.
how long we've been talking?
Just a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Number one. All right, let me just bring them up. We can talk about something in the interim. I want to bring them up
Sure.
again.
Well, the first time I think I remember hearing about you was in Girls' Night Out. I went to a live outside concert and I was just so happy, to see so many great musicians in one band. And you guys were all just a couple of years older than me. So I wasn't in the club, but I was like, wow, I just love all these people. I think I tried to friend all of you at various
Uh-huh.
times.
Oh
and
my
it,
gosh, that's
and
funny.
you guys were doing so many cool things, winning awards, being written up in the
Yeah, and
newspapers. I mean, it was a huge deal. It was a really cool band.
yeah,
And
we
I got to perform with Kathy Berkeley many times, and she's recorded with me many times. I got to record with you. So
I
yeah.
just recorded with her last night.
Oh, that's great.
She's amazing.
I know.
She's an amazing person and an amazing musician. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've
Oh,
always wanted her to teach at Berkeley, but she's declined.
I know. Dee Dee teaches there.
I know. Dee Dee's great.
Yes, Dee Dee is great. I've got this up. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what we've got. Should I be playing these? Do you want to hear them or do you just want to
Yeah.
look?
Yeah. No, let's hear them and hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, here's the first one.
Cool.
Oh, actually, they're all there. Okay.
Great.
Can you see it?
Yeah,
Okay, so is that better?
definitely.
So that's a nice little three-part,
Yeah.
which everybody knows. And I like to talk about the functions and how they impact on the shape of a phrase.
Mm,
Start and tonic. This is a closed phrase, begins and tonic. I don't want to get too into this because I'd rather talk about other stuff too. But so I show them this, and I played it. Then I just added inversions,
cool.
so make them aware of the bass, how important the bass is,
Mm,
because music is, if you think of it as a tangible thing, its borders are the bass and the melody, and
definitely.
the stuff that goes on in between
Yeah.
is where we get in there and
And I was
dwell.
amazed recently playing bass on one of my songs, how many different directions I could take the groove. Like the bass really controls the band. Oh my God.
Yeah, doesn't it?
There's always these new revelations like, how long you been on the planet? How long you been playing bass? You didn't realize that before?
Ah, there's the critic, right? You
Yeah.
must be stupid. You don't deserve to be around all this expensive stuff. Who do you think you are? Get back to the gutter, would you please?
Get back to the gutter. You faker.
Yeah, really. Oh yeah. Imposter syndrome rampant.
Nice.
Right. So there's a little more classical stuff in there, but it's all based on the stuff we teach.
Yes.
And okay, so now let's get to something else. Meter change, dominant sevenths, adding a diminished chord. So now we have a different groove.
And
One,
now
two,
for something completely different.
different, but the same.
Nice. That's very
Right?
cool.
So it's still
Yeah.
twinkle twinkle.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you want to see one here? Another one?
Yeah.
Let's see if I
And
can
your point that you're exploring and sharing with these 5-week students is
just what you can learn from this study, how
yeah.
to do this, how to harmonize a melody in any
Mm.
number of ways. All right, and here's a minor one. Oh, here, actually, let me show you this one. Here's a jazz one, the bottom. This is swing with anticipations, articulations, and compound chords. So this
Cool.
goes up to like harmony 4.
Nice.
So the melody, so manipulating the melody. Ba-da, ba, 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 ba-da, ba, ba, ba-da, ba, ba-da. Right? So
Swing.
learning to control grooves and create, what are the elements that need to be utilized.
Yeah.
So here's starting without, not on the one chord. Oops.
That's great.
And the thing that's interesting about this is that I don't have to hear this to be able to do it, because I
Right.
can do it intellectually. And that to me,
Yeah.
and what happens through that is your ear gets better.
Yeah.
Instead of just coming from ear,
Right.
from intellect and feeding the ear. So there's this thing, this back and forth.
Yeah. It goes back and forth.
And you don't have to do this. Like I tell students, you don't have to do any of this. Knowing that you have this skill is just, I think I think it's invaluable, you know?
It certainly makes things juicy.
Yeah, it does.
I
All right,
love the
I'm
way
just
these
gonna
things.
play you the minor one. There's
Cool.
another
Yeah.
one, but the minor one is really fun.
Sure. And
Where is
maybe just a little softer if there's going to be a big
Oh,
chord.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Some
of
of them are
course.
crackling.
Oh, well, you should have said something. Okay,
Play
it's
it
the
again
sad
softer.
version.
Play it,
It's
play it again softer, please.
a very sad version.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Love that one.
Yeah.
So a sad twinkle little star, and then it turns out to be feeling a little better.
So you can control emotions by understanding
Absolutely.
how modal interchange works, how working with a different, it's a different set of colors,
Definitely.
so
All
so
the chords I choose are to feel a certain way, you know. And guitar, it's interesting because you do only need 3 notes to make a chord, but you've got 6 strings. So we end up with string sets. It's like, which strings do you want to use to find the chord? And if you're going to find 4-note chords, you have the bottom 4 strings, the top 4 strings, the middle 4 strings, the 6th string and the middle 3, or the 5th string and the top 3. And that's where you should look for the root 3, 5, and 7. And it's like I can put my fingers anywhere, and sometimes it's just my ear says, "This one note wants to go down, that one note wants to go up, this one goes here. Oh, you're looking for this chord," but, like, my emotions are leading and my ear is saying, "No, no, no, go this way." It's really fun.
Well, same on piano, it's just piano is like a straight linear thing.
Yeah.
Guitar, I mean, I stopped playing guitar. I started when I was about 8, and I had this the way I learned guitar was public television had this woman named Laura Weber,
There you go.
and she had this TV show with lessons, and you ordered the book and you would
Nice.
watch the show. It's
That's
pretty
so great.
forward thinking at the time. And so I learned
Totally.
how to finger pick and a bunch of other things from her.
It's
I mean,
great.
I just did it on my own otherwise, but I remember that the guitar was the instrument that taught me that I could play by ear. Like,
Nice.
I didn't realize that at the piano. And we have a lot of students that study classical at Berkeley more and more, especially since we've combined with BOCO. A lot
Mhm.
of classically trained people
Yeah.
are afraid to get away from the music.
Yeah. They're not taught chords on their own to say, "Just play A minor." What? Like, you have to write out the voicing.
Well, the guitar, you don't have to know what the notes are to play on the guitar.
I
On the
know.
piano, you kind of do.
Yeah.
You kind of do. I mean, you can't not know if
Right.
so it's interesting how the guitar led me to my ear, I think.
Oh, that's cool. That opened that up for you. So have you been writing songs on guitar as well?
Yeah, I wrote one of my favorite songs on guitar. It was the
Really?
first song I ever wrote on guitar, and I've got a filmmaker made a video of it. It's up on YouTube. It's called "So What About You?"
Oh, cool.
It's the title track of my album that I made years ago, which I think I gave you a copy of.
It's such a great album.
Thank you.
If you want, we can go out with that song on the credits.
Okay, if you like.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm in the studio now. I've just started doing some recording.
Oh, that's great.
It's down the
That's
street from my house, which is good.
perfect.
I need to be close.
What organ is that behind you? That's really cool.
This is my poor A100. It's an A101.
Who
And
makes it?
it doesn't, it's a Hammond. It doesn't work. It's because I don't play it.
Oh,
So I'm not drawn to it when I'm just sitting here.
I like how it fits right there.
I had the space built
Yep,
around it.
that's
Um,
great.
I need to have it repaired. I need a Leslie. Anybody have a small Leslie for sale? I don't have a large space here because I'm not moved to play it with it's got a great reverb. It's got this really rich plate reverb
Mm,
built in.
yeah,
Plate reverb. Maybe it's spring. It's probably spring actually. I don't know. It's really rich.
I could
And-
hook you up with the Hammond guy if you don't know him. He
okay, we can talk about that later.
yeah, yeah. He's fun.
So
Tell me some things you love about composing or creating, or more things about harmony. I mean, people don't really know how the inner workings of some of these things go, or how we feel, or how we do what we do.
Well, it's kind of like throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Definitely.
I don't get up every day and write. I've thought about that, but my rebel self is like, no, you have enough stuff you have to do every day. Let this is kind of like my private thing.
Hmm.
And there's a part of me that goes, well, Allison, if you really cared, if you were really, here's the critic, if you really cared, if you were really serious, you do this all the time. No, it's not true. It's
Yeah,
not true.
yeah. Well, there are a lot of things that can spin our chakras and make us feel really good. So,
Chakras, yes.
it's like whatever does that for you and whatever you feel drawn to do in any moment of time, it's like keep your alignment, keep your sanity, and go for the thing that makes you feel good, that you also enjoy doing. We have a
That's a
lot to
great,
choose from.
that's a great thing to strive for.
Yeah, I think, I have to practice that every day just like everybody else. But, two of the other chats that were on uh, this podcast are Glenn Berger, who wrote that book, uh, Never Say No to a Rock Star, who became a psychotherapist after being a very successful recording engineer,
Oh, I didn't
and
know about this.
and Eric Maisel, that you might know. He's written over 50 books on the creative process and how artists function and what our problems are and how we deal with them, how to get around them, how to stay healthy. Yeah, both those guys have been on here, and they're just amazing, amazing tips. And we have all those human things because we all have these brains we have to train. Like Jerry Seinfeld says, it's a wild stallion, and it needs repetition, and it needs you know guidance. We're here to focus. So since we have the ability to focus on anything, you have to train your brain to focus on what serves you. And Eric was saying you can't let any thoughts remain. You have to keep replacing the thoughts. If any thought comes through that is going to make you feel horrible, stop thinking it. It's like listening to a song that's in your head, can't get the jingle out of your head. You have to replace it with a song that you like, you know
Right. So
the bait and
it's
switch of like the 3-year-old playing with the knife. You just give them the spoon.
you can't break a habit. You have to create a new one.
Exactly.
And
And we have
that's
these grooves that feel comfortable that we like to stay in. So it's easy to just be a victim. And it's like, that's just so boring.
well, we gravitate towards what's familiar, whether it's painful or not.
Exactly. Because that's the groove we're used to being in that feels the most comfortable.
Yes. Some
Yeah.
guy wrote 50 books on the creative process.
Yeah. Over 50. Well,
You know,
on creative lives, on creative living, on one of his books is called Toxic Criticism. It's
I get
great.
it.
And I mean, there's so many. They're really great. But both of them were really great talks, especially for trying to keep your brain on straight. But some of the other people I like listening to are Brooke Castillo and Dana Wilde. They all do brain training things. Brooke Castillo is always saying everything is a thought problem, and the brain is like a 3-year-old running around with scissors. Like you really just have to.
Well, it's a monkey mind.
Exactly. That's
Yeah, yeah.
exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
I,
I I try to get up every day. I heard something interesting that there are different types of brains. Like some people absolutely thrive on predictability.
right.
Get up and I have to have my coffee in this cup or whatever.
Right.
And it has to be at 9:15 in the morning.
Okay.
Have to have that, and then other people are more mutable. I'm a definitely more mutable type,
Me too.
but like I don't meditate every day. I intend to, but it doesn't always happen. I've instead of sitting and doing my mantra meditation that I like to do
Hmm.
sometimes I'll just take 5 minutes and do alternate nostril breathing.
There you go.
Something to center me, to bring me in every day in the morning when I brush my teeth, and afterwards I have various little kind of short yoga series. I mean, yoga is the other thing I teach at Berkeley,
Nice.
and I'm doing a lot more of that lately. I think our students need it.
Get the
And
vagus nerve to respond.
they need their nervous systems to be brought
Calm the heck down.
right, the noise to lower the noise level,
Yeah, yeah.
and like I'll do a lot of breath work.
Cool.
And even just, it becomes anything that you start to practice can be woven. Like the thing about breathing that's so powerful is you can do it anywhere at any time.
Right.
And you can just take a few minutes and go somewhere, or just wherever you are, you can just do it.
Just make sure
Depends.
you bring your nose.
Yes, just blow your nose, bring your
Bring,
tissue,
bring your nose.
bring your nose.
Make sure you bring your nose. If you forget it, you're gonna have to get another one somewhere,
And then it'll all be in your throat, and that might be.
and it won't fit right.
But those are things that I think when you get stressed, you block your creative channels.
Absolutely, you disconnect from the life force. You're not in tune.
And it's okay because we all do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to get off kilter.
You have to. It's like a contrast. So
But
that
so
as soon
many
as
of
you
our students, they beat themselves up. Oh my God, I fell off. Or, and then you spend time beating yourself up. And what good does that do? I always say to people, look, if you had a really good friend that was trying to do something and they were having a hard time with it, would you go up to them and say, oh, why don't you just forget it? You can't do this. No, you'd encourage them. You say, no, you can do it. Try again. So why
right,
don't
right.
you treat yourself like your best friend?
Exactly. That's a great advice. It's great you tell them that.
I
Have you
try
heard of
to tell myself that too.
absolutely.
'Cause who do you
Um,
wake up with every day?
right. Have you heard of the book Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg?
I'm not a much of a reader, honestly. I mean,
It's
I
like
do, but I don't sit and read books like I would like to. I just
yeah, I do a
don't.
lot on Audible now, but a friend of mine reads like over 150 books a year. It's amazing. And she does a million other things. I don't know how, but she listens to a lot of books. So that's easy while she's
I should
cooking
start doing that.
or
That would probably be
driving.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, while driving. I'm
And all
just
those podcasts. There's so many great podcasts.
yes, yes. I have listened to a number of those. That's true.
Yeah. But Natalie's thing with meditating, she was trying to study with a Zen master and she couldn't sit for too many hours. It was uncomfortable, or she would prefer to walk or to do writing meditation. And he was telling her, the Zen master was telling her, just do what comes naturally to you. That could be your practice. You love to write. So just sit and write. That is your meditation. Our practicing is our meditation. Certainly when I'm working on drum things, it gets very meditative, you know? So any way you want to do it that feels natural and easy, that helps you relax and retune.
And if you feel that, like, I would say for a practicing thing,
Yeah,
anything repetitive can become meditative.
exactly. That's my
So
point.
yeah, and if you're practicing, you feel like you're also being productive,
Yeah.
getting something done. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
some
that's the
people
thing.
feel have a very hard time sitting. They feel like they're wasting time. So that's
Yeah.
when, whereas to sit is very, and do you know that yoga postures, well, it's changed over the centuries, but there was a time when yoga postures were considered the preparation for seated meditation.
Oh,
Because if you
cool.
get the body into balance, then it can sit
Sure.
correctly for periods of time.
It was ready for it then. Oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something I love to work with our students. I don't know if I would be comfortable in a public class because so much of where I'm at with my practice is related to the rest of my life and my music. And
Yeah. Now it's time to play piano. Yeah. I I've always felt like there's like this threshold you have to break through. Like sometimes you really feel the desire to do something and it's just easy to get up and go do it. But sometimes there's something you really want to do and you forgot how you started it or how you set it up or how you got back into it. And, like certain gigs I used to do with different bands, if I hadn't played with them in a while, I'd be like, how do we set this up again? How do we do this again? And there's this little place where you could just say, I don't want to do it today. I just don't feel like figuring it out again. But when you do, it goes into this one step in front of the next, that the momentum starts to happen. And then you don't want to stop, you know? It's like we love momentum, but getting to momentum, you need that in
overcoming inertia.
exactly. You have to, I was just saying that exact word. You have to be able to change that state and get into motion and get into that's where Mel Robbins talks about the 5 4 3 2 1 like a rocket, like just get yourself out of bed and go do it, that kind of thing.
Right. No negotiation.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't negotiate if you want it. Right.
Well, because there's your current self that wants something, and then there's your future self that really wishes for something, and there's the past self that probably regrets something. So it's like, which self is driving the bus here? Who am I going to please next? Where am I going? What do I really want? Because, like, again, with Jerry Seinfeld, he go, I'm going to stay out and party all night. I'm going to stay up and not go to sleep or anything. He's like, I don't have to worry about tomorrow. That's morning guy's problem. Night guy wants to have some fun. And then morning guy's like, Why did you do that?
And when you're in your late teens and early 20s and your frontal lobe is not completely developed, you don't think about the future.
When does that when does that actually get developed?
I don't know, it's different for everyone.
Oh,
And I think, doing certain activities can delay its development.
yeah, worry about that. They've been legalized, some of those activities.
Well, I don't think that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, definitely.
Could even venture there. But this there's one thing that meditation and getting quiet allows you to do is really believe that you have a choice as to
Yes, of
what
course.
the next step will be. Whether
Exactly.
it's getting up, if you're lying in bed and you have to pee and you decide to stay in bed, or whether you should get up and go pee. Really, because that's, one of the most basic types of things like that. Would you rather lie there in discomfort, or would you
Yes,
rather go and get the job done?
diminishing returns.
And there's another thing I love is like just being present.
Mm,
When you're playing music and things are going well, and you're
mm,
not worried about the past,
mhm,
not regretting, oh, I should have played that note there.
mm,
And you're not worried, uh-oh, my solo's coming up. You're not worried about the future,
right.
regretting the past, worrying about the future, and everything. You're right in it. That's when time stops. And
Mm.
it's like almost you don't even age when you're in that space.
Yeah. You're just connected and feeling great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And to find that is, I think that's one of the essences of creative production and
totally. How about stage fright? Did you ever have to deal with that?
yeah, I still get it. I think a certain level is okay. A little excitement, a little means you care.
Yeah, that's what I've
But
heard people say.
well,
And it's just the adrenaline, and
yes.
you decide whether that's adrenaline is fear or if it's just excitement.
Or you can fool yourself into turning it into excitement. That's what I try to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same energy. In fact, the brain doesn't know something between something imagined or you're actually there. So if I have an important thing coming up, I start picking the tunes, then I start practicing the tunes, then I start standing up and performing the tunes. I start imagining being at the venue or who's going to be there or who's going to be reviewing. And I start actually getting nervous. And if I can play those first three songs through feeling the nerves, if my hands start shaking or my knees start shaking, because I can really imagine being there, then I've practiced through that adrenaline a little bit more. And when I feel that it'll feel natural, I'll still be able to play.
Well, there's a few things there's a few things that I do. One is imagining the scenario and feeling calm in my imagination as I'm doing it,
That's good.
knowing that people want me to do well.
Yes, they're not coming to
Everybody's
watch you
there
fall.
'cause they're there for you, not against you.
Right.
And especially like doing shows at Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
where that there are intelligent ears in the audience.
Yeah.
And, and then also just, I am where I am, and it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. And all the little millions of little decisions that have to be made when you're not reading music, when you're flying without a net, I call it. You have this idea of what you want to be playing or what you should be playing, and then
Mm.
there's what you're physically able to do, and then you negotiate somewhere in between.
Mhm. And usually when you listen back, you realize, okay, it didn't go where I thought I wanted it to, and I was disappointed, but that was good, you know?
Right, that's good when that happens.
Yeah, it is.
Especially, well, you're a recording mogul at this point,
Yeah,
and so you
I can do it again.
right, you can do it, or I'll never have that recipe again. Oh my God. There's always that. For a more, I don't have the hours in the studio you do. I've put
Mm.
time in, but I haven't been, You were mentioning something before, Lauren, that I wanted to just
Sure.
make a comment about, where, like if you're not sure about something, it's something that you haven't touched for a while and you want to go back to it, but maybe you
Yeah.
might end up turning your back on it. That's how I am with technology, and it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle,
Not
you know.
everybody cares about technology. I mean, you almost have to just do what you have to do, you know?
No, but like I'd like to do more sequencing. I'd like to work with, Logic, or
Hmm.
even GarageBand I've worked with, and
Tons of free stuff on YouTube on how to go about things. You could even just
I
Google the
know,
question
I
you've got
know,
when you're in the middle of it, you know?
I know that.
Oh, okay.
I
Sure.
know all that.
When the time is right, you'll do it.
Well, maybe, but I'm spoiled. I love to have someone who really knows what they're doing do that, and I can just be a musician.
Well, that's cool too. Like
Yeah.
both of those are legitimate. Like you can't get yourself coming and going and saying, but I should want this or I should want that. It's like you keep changing it on yourself. Like, this is what I like, but this is what I should do. Or this is what I'm bad at. And this is what I would rather do. What I wish I wanted to do it more. It's like anything around the house that I need to get to. Sometimes they say, take care of something, because if you look at it every day and you don't get to it, you're going to think less of yourself. So if you can get that out of the way, you'll feel better. You don't have to keep seeing this thing that has to be done that you keep not doing and feeling bad about. But sometimes I see things and I go, I know I'm going to get to that. That's a good reminder. Thank you, brain. But that's not for today. I really have to do this today, you know?
Right. Well, there's four categories. There's the category of things that are important and urgent, and those are the things that get done.
Mm-hmm.
And there are the things that are important and not urgent. And those are the things that make us crazy. And there are things that are urgent but not important, and those are the things that get us into trouble.
This is great.
And
What's
then
the
there's
fourth
things
thing?
that are neither, which are,
They
not
never get done.
non-issue. Right. But if you can make important things more urgent to get them done, sometimes that's an interesting approach.
Well, sometimes I just like knocking things off my list, but yeah, I've gotten better at that. I used to make lists all the time, even if someone said, sit down for a second and stop hummingbirding everywhere. I'll sit down and actually make a list of something to do. And it's like, we didn't tell you to sit down and make a list. We told you to just sit down.
Not
But I'm not like that anymore. I can rest. I love naps. I'm always napping with the dogs, and
Oh yeah, napping with the cats. Yeah,
I've liked naps since I was probably since I was a little kid. Yeah, I was napping in high school. It's like naps are great.
I agree. I don't do them every day, but I do enjoy napping, especially if I have to teach all day and then I have a gig at night.
Oh yeah, I definitely need
Take a nap,
a nap. Yeah.
get up, go. Yeah.
Uh, what did you want to talk about when I invited you to do this thing?
Well, I actually last night, honestly, I've been so busy. I said, "Oh my gosh, I got to listen to Lauren's podcast." So I went up and I found Mark Baxter's
Oh, cool.
interview with you, and
Just
I
did that 2 days ago, I think.
I studied with him for years.
Oh, no wonder you're so great.
Occasionally, I go for a tune-up lesson. I haven't gone in a while,
Well, that's
but
great.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
I went to see him every week for like 5 years, I think, or every other week.
For lessons or watching a
Lessons,
gig? Yeah.
lessons, yeah.
Awesome.
Back when he lived in Brookline. Um,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah,
So you listened to it and then you thought,
part of it. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I listened to some of it.
yeah,
It's great. He's he was telling his whole story. I
I
don't
know.
know. Just hanging out with you is really cool.
I
You know,
know that's what I've been doing. It's just doing it for is the hang.
I didn't really have anything in particular that I wanted to talk about. I think we've covered a bunch of ground. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. Tell you like my roots and all that stuff. And,
Do
it's
you
you said
remember?
hmm?
Oh, go ahead.
You had mentioned Girls Night Out.
Yes.
If you wanted any words about that,
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
but you were going to say something else
I
before.
was going to ask you if you remembered anything about working on the Night Vision album, if there was something about coming here or
Oh,
doing
yeah. Yeah, you just blow me away. You
why?
do everything. I mean, God, you play drums. I mean, you play guitar, you play bass, you play keyboards, you sing, you write,
Mm.
you engineer. I'm just you blew my mind. I mean, the long and short of it, I am.
I just always all that stuff all just went together when I was a kid. It was just like I like playing with microphones and tape recorders, and my dad had a couple of different kinds, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I was always told choose something, stop doing so many things, but now all of a sudden it's hip. Everybody's doing it. It's crazy.
Right, right.
It's
No, I
become
really
normal.
admire that. And
Well,
I thought that I would love to come out to your studio and do some work on some things.
yeah,
Work with you, see if you that's something that will be talked about later.
sure. Especially now that you're tracking things, could always mix something here or do something else here if you're in the neighborhood or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. I live
Never in the neighborhood.
really close to town, so
Yeah.
I'm sort of,
I used to live all in so many different places near Berkeley, and it always took an hour to get there. I lived 5 miles away in Dorchester, and you'd sit in traffic, and it would take an hour to get there. And I lived in Newton, and it took an hour to get there. And I did the trains from Winchester, and it took an hour to get there. And it was just like, so now I live way out Central Mass, but it takes an hour to get there. So
really,
it's
I live in Newton,
43 miles away, and then it's
and
like
there's no traffic. It takes me 16 minutes to get into Boston.
it's if you do not rush hour, right? Yeah,
Yeah, well, I try to avoid it, or the commuter rail is pretty great.
yeah, that's good.
I live a half a mile from it, so
That's awesome.
I don't know. I'm from New York City, so
You walk to the train and then train it in. Yeah, I love
I
walking.
don't always do that. I have a parking spot. I have a really good parking spot at school.
Oh, good.
I've had for years, and the guy loves me because I always pay on time, so he doesn't raise the rent.
That's nice. That sounds like a story for offline as well.
Yes, yes. Well,
So tell me about Girls' Night Out. How did that even start? Were you part
I
of it?
got a phone call
Ooh,
from Dee Dee in 1982 or 83.
fantastic.
And we want to do this girl group thing. We want to do an all-female band. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I was doing a lot of top 40 stuff that time. That was in the day when you could work 4 sets a night, 5 nights a week.
Right.
You'd set up all your gear. I had like 4 keyboards. I'd have everything set up, and you just
Nice.
walk in and play.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I kind of miss that.
I
That
know
was
being a house
really,
band is really fun.
well, it wasn't even a house band. Everybody did like, you do 2 weeks.
Like a residency.
Yeah, but we didn't even call it that. It was just the way gigs were,
Sure.
and like you'd be at a Holiday Inn or you'd be at some restaurant, and
Yeah.
you'd be there all week,
Yeah.
like Tuesday through Saturday.
Right.
Sometimes for 2 weeks.
I did a lot of hotels like that. I didn't have much to set up doing solo guitar and vocal, but yeah, it was set up and you'd hang out in the hotel and yeah,
Yeah, sometimes
sounds
we
great. And how long were you in the band? I mean, you stayed with
Girls'
them?
Night Out. That was the whole time. It
Yeah.
really only lasted for 4 years. I can't believe.
Uh-huh.
The
Why?
band. I mean, now the Love Dogs has been together for 29 years.
That's awesome. And you're a founding member of that. Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, it was
But do you get to set up all the gear and keep it someplace for a while or no?
no,
Because every night is a separate gig.
no, it's all different. But the gear doesn't weigh as much anymore. I mean,
Yeah, everybody's
when
trimmed down.
I was in GNO, well, the heaviest rig I had was when I had my Yamaha Electric Grand.
Wow.
That thing had a pair of road cases that at the time cost $1,000.
Oh, sure.
So that would be like 3 or 4 grand now, easy.
Yeah.
And you could sleep in the damn thing,
Yeah. Yeah. They're like,
And we would have on some gigs we'd have a piano tuner come and tune it. I
really.
could touch it up, but I couldn't really
Oh,
tone.
good. I was going to ask you about that. You touch up your own piano? Because I tune my piano. I have an app on a little Android phone, and it does the stretch tuning, and I just anytime I wanna record, tune the piano if it
Acous
needs.
Your acoustic, yeah?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
I th I think piano players should be taught at least how to fix the unisons. Why do you have to
I
s
can do that. That's
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually worked for, when I was a student at Berkeley, I worked in the piano maintenance department.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, and I mostly worked on Fender Rhodes pianos, rebuilding the old prototypes that they had.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah, putting in the original Fender Rhodes pianos had felt hammers,
Right?
and the problem with those is that they would, because the tines were so thick and inflexible, it would groove the hammer so much,
Oh.
so they would damp the strings. So it didn't really wasn't a good option.
Hmm.
So
What
they started replacing the felt hammers with rubber tips, and those were
what
much better. And
what
that's
other things did you learn doing keyboard maintenance?
Well, I learned how to tune. I tuned Rhodes. That was one of my jobs. I was a Rhodes piano tech. I also rebuilt them, and I
That's
had
awesome.
the manual I created to.
That's a very cool surprise to hear.
And I
That's
started to learn about acoustic pianos, but I was getting to the point where I realized, I don't know, my body doesn't like sitting very long.
Mm,
And I've always needed to move,
mhm.
and, maybe which is why I'm into a lot of movement now.
Yeah, it's
But
good.
I can't, I watch piano tuners. I can't sit for so long. But I learned a lot about the piano and all the.
I can't
I
reach,
just,
so I do it standing. Uh,
well, even if I have a grand, so even if you're standing, you're like,
yes,
you
the
know,
same thing.
yeah, it's the
The
same
same
thing.
position for too long. Yeah,
Right,
gotta
exactly. And
mix it up.
playing guitar too. I've
Yeah,
thought that guitarists should balance their bodies out by taking their instrument, putting it on the other side.
the opposite shoulder. That's why I
Yeah,
wanted to
and
play
also,
drums. I wanted to open up a little bit, because I'm always doing this.
right, and doing this, what often happens is you tighten up the left side of your body.
Mm,
It depends on how you play, but what you're doing is you're externally rotating the left shoulder and internally rotating the right.
mhm.
That's another conversation for another time.
Well,
Let's
yeah, I had a masseuse notice that once. I was on my stomach, she's rubbing my back, and she said, "Hey, what's going on with your shoulders here?" She said, "Oh, you play guitar, you're right-handed." I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, maybe we could fix that. How long have you been playing?" It's like, "Since I'm 9 years old." She's like, "Forget it, we'll leave that alone."
You could play the other way,
Yeah,
just, I mean, it's gonna just to balance the muscles.
right.
Piano is very balanced. The only problem with piano is the pedal. I have a little bit of arthritis in my big toe of the ball of my right foot, and I think a lot of it is from the accelerator pedal in the car and the sustain pedal on the piano.
Oh, wow.
And then it offsets your hips as well. So,
Reaching for it.
yeah, this is constant repetitive motion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we address a lot of that in yoga.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you gotta figure out sort of what's causing what. Yeah, makes
Okay,
sense.
so one of the things that happened to me in Girls Night Out was a dream. It was a dream scenario. Our first gig was at a place called the Inn Square Men's Bar,
I remember that name.
which was in Inman Square in Cambridge, and that was our first gig. And we were doing girl group music of the 50s and of the early 60s, Supremes, Darlene
Girls.
Love, the Ronettes, the Crystals, the Chiffons, all this stuff.
Oh, wow. That was a good idea.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. And I was a little young. I was the youngest one in the band. I didn't know some of the material.
Mm.
Some of it I did, like Stop in the Name of Love. Um, to
Dreams.
to some Aretha.
Yeah.
Dee can sing anything,
Oh, yeah.
but there were four of us sang.
Oh, that's
Me,
amazing. I remember.
Wendy, Dee and Sandy. We were the singers. Dee Dee was the main lead singer, and our first gig we wore we wore sequin tops and mini skirts and fishnets, and so we were doing like the mid-60s groove, you know. I had all these like beetle boots I ended up getting like down in New
Oh,
York,
cool.
like purple and black and
Did you
yeah.
ever did,
Hmm?
did did you guys ever do that one? Won't you marry me, Bill?
Yeah, I think we
Got the
did.
wedding
Love you so,
bell.
do Wedding Bell
I,
Blues.
that's such a great song.
Yeah, you can't hurry, love. No, you just got to wait.
That was a good one.
Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. I mean, I could
Definitely.
dig out an old. I've got a lot of stuff in my archives, set
Yeah.
lists and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we played our first gig. We got a full write up in the Phoenix after our first gig.
Nice.
How many bands played for months and months without getting any write ups?
Right?
Our
Was that
second gig was at the Tam O'Shanter in Brookline.
used to play there? Yeah.
Yeah. And there were lines down the street.
Awesome. Because of the gig, because the paper.
And we got written up in the Globe.
Nice.
And it was just one thing after another, just went
Well, in a way, it was a novelty back then. What year was that? I mean, to have that
83,
many excellent musicians in a band that were
83,
actually women, come on.
83
83. There you go.
started. Yep.
That's when I heard about you guys.
Yeah, it was, and I'd never been in a band that had any notoriety before. I'd only done when I got out of school, the first thing I did was I went to the Virgin Islands with a Latin rock funk band called Fortuna Bay. And
That's
that
a
was
good place to go.
amazing. That was incredible. You know who Oscar Stagnaro is, right?
No.
Well, he's a bass teacher at Berkeley.
Okay.
He's from Peru originally. He was the baby in the band. He was like 17 or 18.
Oh, that's great.
And yeah, I mean he could play Latin music like no tomorrow.
Oh, sure.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the band, and who else that you might know of? Oh, I don't know. I don't think any
But
else.
how long were you in the Virgin Islands? That's a beautiful place to be.
1 month in St. Croix and 1 month in St. Thomas.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was my first steady gig.
That's a great first
I
stage.
got back and the band split up pretty soon after we got back. Our first gig back was Jack's in
Oh,
Cambridge.
I've
I think
played
I
there.
paid $8. It was it was like a prediction of things to come. And the next gig we went down to the gig in the mail truck that the band had, MAIL.
I wanted to get one of those.
And I remember sitting on like the engine or something. It was on top of this is not on the engine
The
directly,
guy who
but
resold all the old mail trucks and rebuilt them and stuff wouldn't sell one to me because there was no heat. It's like, I'm not selling this to you. Your father will kill me.
well, that's good. Well, we got down to the gig. I think it was in Connecticut, and there was another band there. They had gotten double booked, so we didn't do the gig.
Oh, jeez.
That's like going to the gym and the gym is closed, and you're like, oh, but I gotta work out.
I know.
It was the
Or
same.
paying a cab to take you over to a club because they said they wanted you to come do a live audition. And it turns out it was not even the owner that you were talking to. It was his father, who's a drunk who sits in the corner and answers the phone.
There you go.
And they
Right.
weren't planning to hire you anyway. That actually happened to me.
Sure did. How could you make that up?
Oh,
Right,
God.
so Fortuna Bay kind of fizzled out, and then I started doing top 40 stuff, you know, and different things. And I did a few other things, little traveling with a reggae kind of country thing. And I
That
mean,
is
life
really
was all
good.
right. You could live on like $250 a week back then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so money was good. If you made like $200 a week, that was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was.
I just found a gig list from my first band, or really my second or third band. We were 16 years old and we were always doing private gigs, private parties and stuff. And there were like 16 gigs there, and we got paid more then than bands are getting paid now. Even when you do the inflation calculator thing. It was like, wow, we actually made money back then, gigging.
Right. Well, you could just play in bands and work like 2, 3 nights a week. And I always, it's funny because I always taught. When I was
Yeah,
in
me
junior
too.
high school, I was a math tutor.
Oh, wow. I was giving guitar lessons.
I didn't decide to become a full-time musician until I was 18.
Oh, what was the deciding factor?
Chick Corea.
There you go.
No, I
What?
don't. That was one of my main inspirations. I don't
Okay.
know. I joined. I didn't know anything about jazz, and I got in a jazz ensemble, and I thought this is pretty interesting. Like I said, I was listening to a lot of fusion music. I
Mm.
became friends with the keyboard player from a band called Larry Coryell's 11th House,
Oh, yeah.
and he's still a friend today, Mike Mandel.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah, and I would go out and see them all the time, and see John McLaughlin and Frank Zappa, and who else did I go see?
Mm.
Oh, I don't remember. Those are the main ones I remember seeing when I was a kid.
So you
Listen
saw
to
Chick Corea or you were in an
Hammer,
ensemble?
Jan Hammer. Oh, Chick Corea. No, I heard the album Light as a Feather.
Okay. Yeah. Remember all of our ensembles when we were students were playing that.
Well, I listened to that and I said, I have to figure this out. And that was the
Oh, cool.
first time I really got in and did that. I dropped the needle
Yeah.
and I was at home in my dad's house. And it took me like 3 hours. I didn't know anything about cut time. I didn't understand because thanks to that first teacher that screwed me up. No. Yeah, actually, I kind of got it together after that, but I didn't understand Latin. I didn't know how to break that down and write that out or figure that out.
But you
So
heard it, so all you had to do was play it back.
I, I was just, I was taken, I
Yeah.
was smitten. So then one thing led to another, and so I kind of learned a little bit about jazz, and I can sort of play jazz now, kind of. I don't consider myself a jazz musician because I don't dedicate. I feel
Yeah, I
that
don't
there's a
even.
certain dedication level required that I don't have that, stick to itness or sit to itness, sit for hours, and I just I'm too distracted maybe. Anyway, that's
Well, you got
so
to do
anyway.
what gives you goosebumps, and if that
Well, it
figuring that stuff
does to
out
be able to
doesn't,
do certain things does that, but
yeah, certain riffs like that. Yeah,
so GNO, we did this second gig, and like one thing after another happened. We just started getting booked all over the place,
that's awesome.
and it spiraled and to the point where we eventually had a manager.
Mm-hmm.
We had a road crew.
Wow,
We had roadies. Yeah, we had roadies, and
nice.
we had like a 2 or 3 man road crew. Um, and we started doing showcases in New York at the bottom. We played at the Bottom Line in New York City.
Fantastic.
People came to see us. Um, I wish I had been more connected to the business side of things, but I wasn't. I was more interested in having fun.
Well, what do you think you would have done differently?
I think I might have just gotten a little more involved and a little more curious about what was happening in terms of negotiations with record companies
Oh,
because we never got a deal.
were you doing originals at that point then? Not
Oh
just.
yeah. Oh yeah. We had more from just doing girl group stuff to doing Dee Dee's material. Dee
Oh,
Dee was a prolific and still is a prolific songwriter. I mean, she's
okay.
amazing. I
Yeah,
don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she's just, she wrote for the band.
awesome.
Yeah, she had had a band called Dee Dee Stewart and the Amplifiers prior to that. They got signed by Kirshner, Don Kirshner, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Unfortunately, he went bankrupt, I think, right when her record was coming out. So it was bad timing. So nothing happened for her with that. But, everything's timing in the business.
Mm.
So yeah, we had endorsements from Zodiac shoes.
Oh, cool.
They gave us all pairs of shoes so that we would be in there. So we would use their shoebox in one of our videos. Yeah. Video that was funded by Filene's.
Oh, wow.
One of our songs, they paid to have a full, feature, concept video made. They sent us down to the Cape and we stayed there for 3 days filming.
Wow.
We had all kinds of stuff happening. We played some big shows. We would go out to Rochester, New York and play the Lilac Festival every year. That was really great.
Wow.
It got to meet Ronnie Spector, Martha Reeves. We sat in with Peter
Wow.
Noon from Herman's Hermits and sang with him.
Sure.
Yeah, we went to Rochester. That's probably the furthest we ever traveled. We go up to Vermont and play in Killington, and we'd go to New York and we played in New York. And, like I said, I was too busy having a good time to really sort of get in there and go, okay, so now, like really examining other stuff. I signed a contract, contracts. We had a lawyer. It was a whole thing. And I was just kind of in la la land. I'm living the dream,
You were enjoying it. That was probably the best thing you could do.
Well, yeah, I guess, but nothing ever ended up happening. What happened, first thing
All
that
those things
happened,
happened.
what?
All those things happened.
All those things happened, and then I got sick.
Oh,
I was in an accident. Actually, Dee Dee and Wendy were in the car with me. We were driving from a gig in Vermont, and we were driving out to Western Mass on the Pike, and it was the first winter snowstorm. I think it was 1986. Yeah, it was. And we were driving out, and it was the first snowstorm, and it was slippery. And we were driving along, and somebody was in the lane to the right of us, all of a sudden turned the nose of their car towards the Meridian. And I slammed on my brakes, but I had to hit them because it was so sudden. We were going like 50 miles an hour, 40, maybe even less because it was slippery. And because it was slippery, we both slid. I think it could have been really bad. Could have been a serious head-on crash. As it was, my transmission cracked and my car didn't work, and we got jolted. But I think I got a little whiplash and some other things happened. We never made it to the gig in Western Mass, but
oh,
my low back started bothering me shortly after the accident. But I didn't pay any attention to it. I continued having a good time. And over the next like 4 or 5 months, I started developing severe sciatica, and I had to stop playing for 6 months.
oh,
I was in bed for 3 months. It was very sick. It was really bad.
that's really painful stuff.
It was, and the band had subs while I was out. And when I came back, I don't know if it was because I was out. I think things were running their course. I think I played some more gigs, but things just, it fizzled out. I don't remember the actual circumstances. I was very busy healing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that.
What a great run, though. What a great band. And you're all still great musicians. It's just
We're all
awesome.
still really good friends too, which is awesome.
Oh, that's really important.
And Mariana plays with the Love Dogs.
Oh, good.
Play together a lot. And I play with Wendy and Sandy and Kathy. We do all different little projects. With Mariana too, we do different all girl things and other stuff too.
Awesome.
And Cersei.
Oh,
Cersei,
yeah.
yeah. And Cersei teaches at Berkeley too.
She's got the best tone.
In her alto playing. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
she's
She
amazing.
she would play baritone sax, and she's not a tall person. She'd play baritone sax in super high heels.
Wow. That was
I
a
remember always looking over her going, oh my God, I can't believe her.
holding that up, just the weight of that thing even.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's mighty.
Mighty girl.
Yeah.
And
We
she
love
has
'em all.
twins.
Wow.
Well, they're
She needs
grown now. They have
needed
family.
that strength just to hold the 2 babies.
I don't think she didn't have kids when we were in the band. No.
No. Cool.
All right.
Well, this has
Well,
been great.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah, we should.
shove off, but this has been amazing, Lauren.
Yeah. This has been fun.
Just
Thank you so much.
visiting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's what it is basically. It's just visiting, but
There's so many more things I'd love to chat about, but we'll have to do
yeah,
it again sometime.
another time. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for everything you do. And I want to come out to your Western Mass sanctuary sometime.
We'll have to do it.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
All right.
Thank you so much, Allison.
Yeah. Thank you. Be well.
Take care. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.